before we start, here's a little quiz for you. Is this a seal or a sea lion, or is there no difference between the two? Does anybody know the answer? Is this a seal or a sea lion, or is there no difference between the two? Anyone have an idea? Good. I didn't either until I taught this course. Even though I'm a marine biology student, we didn't do a lot of studying of the marine mammals. So you're going to learn today what the difference is between them, as well as some other species. Okay. So these are important characteristics of all marine mammals. This also includes the reptiles and the birds that we spoke of yesterday. So oh no, I take that back. The reptiles and birds are not marine mammals. This will include everything we speak of from here on out. So all marine mammals breathe air. They have lungs. They all have hair. Some have more than others, but they do have hair. Yes, even dolphins and whales. They give birth to live young. They nurse their young with milk from their mammary glands. They all have a long life expectancy. 20 to 40 years is typical, sometimes even longer. They are all warm-blooded, meaning they can self-regulate temperatures. And they are all intelligent. Now, intelligent by definition just means they have the ability to do some kind of reasoning. Okay, I'll leave that up there for just a second because that takes a little more writing. That's when they beach themselves. No, that was a bad joke. Sorry. Okay, so there are 4 major groups of marine mammals. The sea otters get their own category, just mainly because of the shapes of their limbs. Then we have what are called the sirenians, and you are, by the way, responsible for these terms and understanding which organisms are in which group. Okay, so if I give you the name of something, you should be able to identify the group it's in. Okay, so the sirenians only include the manatees and what are called dugongs. The pinnipeds include seals, sea lions, and walruses. And the cetacea or cetaceans, which is the singular form, plural form, sorry, include whales, dolphins, and porpoises. You can always go back in and fill these in from the posted slides then if you missed them now. Okay, so the first group is the sea otters. And actually the otter family in general, including fresh and salt waters, includes things like skunks and weasels. but there is only one species of marine otter. It is the sea otter. It's the largest of all otters and can reach 100 pounds. It feeds, sleeps, and reproduces at sea. Okay, so it will go toward the shoreline to reproduce, but it does not leave the sea. If you see one of these guys floating on its back, it may have a sea urchin between its paws because that's its main source of food. It will pick up the sea urchins and open them with its teeth and then eat the inside. They do drink seawater, but they have extra large kidneys to help remove the salt. So they have very salty urine. When they hang out together in groups, they hang out in what are called rafts. So basically they'll form like a large group, a large cluster, and they will hold on to each other and float together. But when they do this, they actually segregate by sex. The males and the females do not hang out together except during mating time. And they like to use long strands of kelp and other seaweed to anchor them in place. So just think of like a floating mass of otters held in place by a strand of kelp. And they have the densest and thickest fur of all of the marine mammals. It's so thick that water cannot penetrate it at all. And therefore they were hunted quite massively in the past for their fur to near extinction about 100 years ago, but now they've made a recovery. So sea otters are only found in the North Pacific, so along the northern coast of North America, across the Bering Sea, and then across the southern end of Asia. So that's the only place you will see sea otters. Okay, now the Sirenia or the Sirenians. I'm sure you've all heard of manatees, sometimes called sea cows. So these guys are pretty ugly. They're just lumbering giants. They are very lazy. They kind of just float around, and they're called the gentle giants of the sea. I'd like to be a gentle giant. They can reach up to 12 feet in length, and they live a very long time. Some of them can live up to 70 years. So you can see from the picture, the dugong and manatee look very similar. It's really just about location. The manatee lives in the Atlantic. We see these a lot in the Florida region. And the dugong lives in the Pacific and the Indian Oceans. They do not have any pelvic fins. So you will notice on the underside, there are no fins in the rear. They have the caudal fin and the pectoral fins, but no pelvic fins. So that tends to be why they roll around a lot in the water. They don't have as much stability. They are herbivores. They only eat plants. And one thing about these critters is they are attracted to fresh water, okay? And they will be found swimming into bays in like Florida and things, into boat yards where people have fresh water. They might leave a hose running near a boat or something, and they will come into that area for the fresh water. But unfortunately, when they come into these shallow areas, they get cut up by the propellers on boats. So that is the main source of death and injury in manatees and dugongs, is from propellers on boats. They're slow, they don't move out of the way, and they're attracted to those shallow areas because of fresh water. If you've ever spent time on the docks or in a fishing area down in Florida, you may see signs that say, please do not leave your fresh water running, or please do not leave your hose in the water, because people got to the point where they were intentionally leaving the hoses on so that it would draw the manatees in because they wanted to see them, and it was causing a lot of death. So I feel bad for them. There is an extinct Sirenia. It's no longer around. It was called the Seller's sea cow. You can see a picture of one here. This shows how quickly something can become extinct. These were not discovered until 1768, and they became extinct within 25 years due to hunting. So that shows you how much man can impact a species. Okay, now for the pinnipeds. The word pinniped means fin-footed. So these guys have fins that act as feet, and they include the seals, sea lions, and walruses. So fur seals are different from regular seals. The name fur seal and sea lion refer to not true seals. They are sea lions and they are not true seals. We'll talk a little bit more about what differentiates them in a minute. Well, first we'll talk about what the characteristics of a fur seal and sea lion are. So fur seals and sea lions have external ears. So you can see the little ears on the sides of their faces. They have very flexible flippers. They can walk on them very well. And most importantly, they have a pelvis, a rear region where their tail is, that can rotate. So they can move it back and forth, which gives them excellent motility on land. They can move around very well on land, in the land and on the water. And they use their front flippers for swimming. Now, obviously, they use their tails a little bit, but it's primarily their front flippers. Okay, so we'll contrast those with the regular seals then shortly. So this picture here on the left and the right show the most famous sea lion, the California sea lion. They're often used as circus performers. You'll see these at SeaWorld. They're unusually intelligent, they're excellent swimmers, and the population is listed as least concern because this is probably the least hunted species of all the marine mammals. So while you cannot really tell it has fur, if you look here at a close-up here of this pup, you can see that it obviously has fur there. And it is found on the Pacific coast of the US and Canada. Here's another picture of some sea lions and fur seals. These are called the Steller sea lions. They said we had the Steller, whatever that other thing was, sea cow. These Steller sea lions are near threatened. They're a little bit bigger, so they are hunted for their fur. And this image here just shows you the range. It has a slightly larger range. And then we have the northern fur seals. Okay, these are still considered not true seals. These get much, much bigger. You can see the male here in front can get very, very massive. You will usually have one dominant male and then a harem of females that he mates with. Any young male would have to fight with the adult senior male in order to take over the harem. So they typically will lose and leave and find their own harem. And again, they cover a similar range as the others. This shows you some seals that have come on shore for breeding. And they call that a rookery, where they come in and mate massively. This rookery happens to be on a Russian island. And the population of seals coming ashore since the 1970s has dropped about 50%. And they see about 5 to 7% drop every year. So they are considered vulnerable on the Endangered Species Act. Okay, the last of the, or not the last of the pinnipeds, the second of the pinnipeds are the walruses, and there's only one species. Of course, you've probably seen them with their tusks. They were once hunted heavily for their tusks and became near extinction in the early 1900s, but they are now protected. They are very big. They get up to 3,300 pounds, so that's about 1.5 tons. Even though they are so big, they only feed on invertebrates on the bottom. They use their tusks like rakes, and they'll go on the bottom and they'll scrape until they loosen the invertebrates, and then they'll put them in their mouths and take them to the surface. One of their favorite meals are clams and oysters and other bivalves because they will actually break the shell and then just suck the meat out of the mollusks. So like the manatee, they're pretty slow moving. They're slow swimmers, but they can dive to about 100 meters. And they can hold their breaths for a very, very long time, about a half an hour. So they take their time when they're going to look for food. Walruses actually have some of the most animated facial expressions of all sea creatures. So if you sit and watch a walrus, you'll notice changes in its face. And they are highly sociable. Okay, now let's talk about the true seals and how they differ from the sea lions and fur seals. First of all, they lack visible outer ears. So they may have just a hole there, but it's generally not highly visible because it has fur around it. Also, they cannot rotate their pelvis. So basically they are stuck in this long position. You'll often see them flopping as they go across the surface, essentially using like a breakdancing move to move themselves. You can see that their front flippers, their front fins are very small, and because their bodies are so massive, they really are efficient in helping them move. So they're basically helpless on land. So when they do come on land to warm up or to breed, they can be easily preyed upon or hunted. The most common seal is called the harbor seal. And they're very common. They are very abundant, but they have been recently affected by a virus that seems to only affect these seals, and it hasn't been yet eradicated. Sounds familiar, huh? Kind of like the coronavirus. They do prefer cold waters, but they do migrate, so you'll see them throughout the oceans. Okay, we'll stop there today because the next class we are going to talk about the cetaceans. So we're going to look at all the different types of whales and dolphins and porpoises out there and differentiate between those. Okay, so you can use the remaining